Welcome back to AutoTechNick. Today, this video, it's an accumulation of roughly 6 months worth of work where I'm going to show you guys the steps I took to get this BILGE gel coated and a color match to the exterior of the boat. Tremendous amount of work went into this one, guys. It's going to be worth it. Hang tight. Alright guys, now before we really jump into it, a little bit of a disclaimer. If you count this is my first time spraying gel coat, which I did on a separate video, which is a test panel that I did to prove out my theory and concept and also get familiar with the product. That makes this right here and this whole project in today's video the second time that I spray gel coat. So I am not a professional gel coat. I did talk to pretty much everyone that I knew that had knowledge of gel coat, did a tremendous amount of reading and research. So anyone that has answered any of my questions, posted any information on the internet, any video, I thank you, because I took all of those resources, pulled them all together, and that's what allowed me to get this result done myself. I know that I didn't do it the most efficient way, the quickest way, or probably the best way. My end goal, or number one priority, was the end result. Time, material usage, all of that wasn't as much of a concern. So with that being said, when you watch this video, keep that in mind, because I am quite positive, or I hope, the professionals can do this a lot better than I did. But either way, I'm still very happy with the results that I got. Alright, one last thing before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this video. Typically, I try to keep my time-lapse footage down to a minimum on my videos. I had to go against that rule for this video simply for the fact that I really wanted to convey how much time I spent masking this boat. I could tell you till I'm blue in the face, and I don't think it translates, so I did my best to capture it all via time-lapse. And if you really pay attention, notice how many times my outfit changes through all the videos, and you'll realize that that's a different day, and the amount of time and days I have in the masking this project to achieve this result is considerable. Figure there might be some new viewers or some of you that haven't seen this project, been progressing up to this point, but really the short story of this is this is my 1979 Centurion. It's a 20.5 foot long jet boat. And the really cool part about this boat is my father bought it in the early 90s when I was a young teenager. We used it as a family boat. I learned the water ski behind this boat, made a lot of memories, so this boat holds a tremendous amount of sentimental value because I basically grew up with it. Although this boat has been in the family so long and it has been maintained very well, time and age eventually got to it, and I discovered a couple years into me having the boat that the stringers are rotten. So at that point, I parked the boat, and that's where this whole series kicks off, where I've been going through and replacing all of the wood in the boat. So I've replaced the stringers, I've replaced the transom, I've reworked all of the bulkheads, I've reworked my gunnel supports, and I've actually just been making tweaks and changes along the way because, honestly, I wanted to do it the best that I can. I want to really make sure that I get this done now, so that way we can just use this boat, make more memories, and have it all out of the way. So with that being said, that's where we're at today, and that's where we're going to go ahead and gel coat this bilge. I totally get it. Completely overkill, absolutely over the top. No one's going to see it. I know. Just part of me wants to do it. Stuck in my brain, can't kick the idea. The main reason I'm gel coating back here is for additional waterproofing and protection in the bilge. Since the boat sits low in the water, any water back here won't permeate into the fiberglass and hopefully into the stringers, but also it's just going to look badass when it's done. Here we are again, one more time with the boat mocked up. So you can see that I tossed in both fuel tanks. I just have this aluminum angle down here sitting in place. Place diverter pump, battery, again, everything's just sitting in here. Pump intake is in, and sent that out, got it powder coated, so it's looking really nice. But I did this because I need to determine where I want all my lines for all the different colors that I'm going to put in this bilge. And I need to have these items in here because they're essentially obstacles that I'm going to have to work around. And also, I want to know what it's going to look like visually, so when I tape out these panels, put the components in the boat, it doesn't look half finished. The best way I can give you an example is if I were to do the transom, and the overall scheme I'm going to do is essentially have a background color and make it look like it has inlaid panels. So on the transom, if I were to run that panel all the way over to the edge and all the way around the perimeter, well, the fuel tank's covering up 8 inches of it, so it would look weird. So once I have everything set in here, I've looked at it and decided that I'm going to actually break that line right in front of the wood mount for the fuel tank, and then that's all going to be just one darker color in the back because you can't really see it and it disappears. So I wanted to get all of this in here and mocked up so that way when I decide the shape and size and placement of these panels I'm putting in, I know that it's going to look good once all the components are in. It's probably going to look a little weird when everything's out of the boat because they're going to end prematurely, and it would have been the other way around. If I would have done it with everything out of the boat so the panels looked good and then put all the parts into the boat, it probably would have looked not as good. All of this is incredibly subjective, purely aesthetic, so you can see I've already started experimenting with some tape on this line. I need to go ahead and just really figure out the offset from the stringer of where I'm going to go ahead and start my background color. Once I get that decided on the sides, that's going to allow me to go ahead and just get everything else lined out and masked up. So that's enough talking. I have a lot of figuring to do. I'm going to jump to it. Once I get this all planned and figured out, we're going to come back, show you what we ended up with, and then we're going to start getting this gel coat on this boat. So here we are, and hopefully now it's very clear with the panels that I have laid out, so you can see the back transom. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where I stopped it short because of the fuel tank. So if I would have ran that pattern all the way over, it would have looked great. Now I think it would have looked weird when the fuel tanks are out. So you can see that I have it on the sides there. It kind of curls back on the side of the battery, kind of loops around the mount for the place diverter pump, kind of loops around on the pump intake. So essentially the first color we're going to lay is the background. It's going to cover the stringers here. It's going to cover the borders of the transom. There's a little bit on the floor all the way around the base of the stringers and on the inside. And it's also going to cover the front of that engine box. Now what I wanted to show you and talk about are the water drains that I put into the stringers. So I'm going to be spraying this gel coat in with a gun, and I know that I just wouldn't be able to get coverage in there for those water drains. So I went ahead and mixed up a very small batch of gel coat, and you can see that I just went in there and brushed it in there. So the quality of finish wasn't that great, but my thinking with that is as I spray it in, the overspray from the gun is going to go over that, and I now know that I'll have good coverage. It'll be more waterproof, watertight, but also not bare, and it would have been a lot harder to brush that in after I spray in the gel coat. So I did that ahead of time, just mixed up I think ½ ounce gel coat, used a small little brush and hit it in there. Also went ahead and put my studs back into the screws for the battery tray. Again, Teflon taped them, ran them down. That worked great when I fiberglassed everything in, so I'm hoping that's going to once again work like I hope. Once I spray the gel coat on and it's dried, I'll go ahead and back those out. And also you can see I have extra panels here on the side. Those won't be seen. Those are covered by the fuel tanks. I did that because I only have 1 quart of the color that I'm applying here, and I was worried about having enough coverage for everything. So rather than just occupy all of that with the color that I'm worried about having enough of, I have 2 quarts of this cream that I'll be using. So I just made another panel. We'll paint that cream. You'll never see it, but it's just helping me be a little bit smarter and get better use of material. I'll shoot you guys straight on masking this boat, or we need to jump back on establishing my lines and placement to where I was going to do the panels. That took me a solid day plus. So there's a lot of inconsistencies on the boat of the stringers, side to side, left to right, nothing symmetrical. And it made it a lot more difficult because I couldn't keep the same standoff, so to speak, all the way around. And I kind of had to fudge and kind of give and take some of the things, so that way everything looked good. There was a lot to take in consideration. I had the laser level out here. I had my wife out here taking a peek. It just took a lot of working, thinking, trying, retrying, figuring, standing back, and we eventually got there. Once I had the borders of my panels decided upon, it took me another day to get them masked up. There's initially a layer of fine line tape that establishes the panels as my initial layer. I went over it with the blue masking tape and paper, And you can see that I have fine line tape on top of that. So there was a lot of masking that I did. The fine line tape is there, so after each coat of gel coat I apply, I can peel that tape off, and it's going to hopefully give me a taller, steeper edge on the edge of the gel coat, and also make it easier to peel off all of my masking as the gel coat builds up in thickness. So quite a bit going on, quite a bit of masking. Last thing I need to do now is drop down my plastics, blow it off, wipe it down, and then we'll be ready to spray in some gel coat. So it's been a very long road and a lot of work to get to this point. I'm very excited to get this gel coat on, see what it's going to look like, see my vision come to life. It is time to get some gel coat onto the boat. All right, so the first color is on, dried, paper's off, and now you can really see those panels that I'm talking about. They're just all the bare glass now. Now, I really have several things that I really want to talk about on just this first application of how it deviated from what I planned on and my experience overall. But rather than going into that and talking about it now, I'm going to go ahead and get the beige and the orange put on as well. So it's going to be a lot of wash, rinse, repeat. Masking, spraying, peeling, wiping everything down, remasking, spraying. I'm going to get through all that. Once that's done, I'm going to bring you guys back and we're going to go ahead and really just unpack what went on here, what problems I encountered, and what to watch out for while doing something like this. So for now, it's time to get it masked back up, and the next color going on is going to be this off-white / cream. So it's going to fill in the panels and really make a big difference. Since I'm applying this cream, this lighter color on the main part of the panels this go around, I needed to mask off the area that's going to be orange, where I don't want any gel coat on there at all, because we're going to come back and fill that in later. So as what I use is 1/2" fine line tape. I butted it up against the brown all the way around and got everything masked up. But now, essentially, if you just pretend that that blue is going to be the orange, the fiberglass is going to be the light tan, it really gives you a good idea of what the final look is going to look like. It's exciting for me, and each step that I go and do this, it makes it more and more visual to what I'm going for, and each time I do that, I'm still very happy with what look I'm getting, the symmetry of everything, and just the overall appearance of it. Just wanted to stop and show you that real quick, because what I need to do now is get all of the brown that I put on papered off and everything masked up. Once I get the paper on, I'm going to do one more layer of the vinyl tape over the blue so I can keep that height, peel it as I'm spraying it, and it's time to rock and roll. All right, for those of you that may be professionals at spraying gel coat or do a lot of gel coat work at home, I'm gonna just start off by saying much respect, mad props to you guys. That stuff is absolutely, in my opinion, terrible to work with, very difficult. It's trying to bite you in the ass every chance it can get. Takes a lot of work to prevent all that from happening. I'm sure some of you guys already know that, but nonetheless, that was an absolute assload of work. As I mentioned earlier, I had a bunch of notes that I wanted to go through on this job, so before we really go through and inspect what result we have here, I kind of wanted to talk on some of those talking points. One of those being was the amount of time this all took. It was an absolutely tremendous amount of work that I have here. Now, if we backtrack just to the time it took me to apply gel coat after the whole bilge was prepped, it took me roughly 2 months. Now, there is a vacation in there, there's Thanksgiving, there's some holidays, there's normal life, so it is cut up a little bit, but in general, that's a long time for what we did. I mean, if we want to go even further and count the time that I spent preparing the bilge with the extra fiberglass and sanding it down, that's an extra 2.5 to 3 months right there. So we're at 5 months, and I'm not even 100% finished with this bilge, so this is a huge time addition to the build, big commitment, and I kind of knew that it was going to be going into it. I didn't know it'd be that much. And in all reality, the biggest time suck when it comes specifically to this gel coat was masking. Now, if you guys recall on my first video, or the very first time I sprayed gel coat here on this test panel, I was using wax gel coat and I was testing my methods that I eventually applied here. I didn't use wax gel coat on this go around. I went with unwaxed gel coat for this whole bilge job, and I used PVA on top of it to cure it. Now, I did that or made that choice after doing this panel simply for the fact that by going with an unwaxed gel coat, it gives me more time in between coats versus the wax gel coat where I have to keep reapplying the coats really quickly, so that way the gel coat doesn't cure too much. Now, I wanted that extra time because it's such a big area. I'm a rookie and I have a lot of tape to peel in between each coat. It gives me a bigger window in between coats to get the tape peeled and a little bit more of a cushion. I'm glad I did. It worked out well. Just one thing that I deviated from when I did my initial test panel. All right, I mentioned it just a second ago, masking. That's where I've invested most all of my time on this whole project. Now, I used 1/2 inch fine line masking tape to establish all my lines and shapes. Quite a bit of time was spent just establishing the first shape that I had planned in here, but still, once that was established, masking over it took quite a bit of time. I noticed a couple things with this fine line tape. One, it's wintertime. I do have a heat pump in the shop, so I can keep it relatively humid free and warm, but temperature fluctuations between day and night and the amount of time it took me to mask this boat up means that the tape was on the boat for a while, and with the temperature increasing, decreasing, the tape where I would have it bent around a corner would pull and lift. Also, fast forwarding a little bit, when I was spraying the gel coat, I found that if I had this tape bent or stretched quite a bit, and it seems like as soon as that gel coat hit it, it wanted to lift or move, which created a lot of problems. When I first went to lay out my lines, I wanted good symmetrical corners, so that means I ended up going and making a bunch of cardboard templates to get my radiuses that I could trace and make them all symmetrical. And I thought that's all there was, just use some cardboard, quick and easy. Now, after I sprayed the first brown gel coat, I had bent the tape around all those corners, and that's where I really discovered that they were lifting, created a lot of problems. So learning from that, when I jumped to go ahead and spray the beige and the orange, I went ahead and made new templates, but I made these ones out of steel, which there's quite a bit of time right here made in these templates. As you can see, they have a very nice, precise fit. I spent a lot of time on these. Now, I did that because I took wider fine line tape and ran it diagonally across the corners, and I was able to lay the template on there. It's precisely a 1/2 inch all the way around, which is the size of orange stripe I wanted. And I used this and I cut that fine line tape in shape. Therefore, I could have all of the masking placed onto the boat without any stretching or pulling of the tape. And it really helped out quite a bit keeping it in place, especially since it took, in some cases over a week to get it masked up for the next color. So that way when I came back a week later, everything was where I wanted it and how I wanted it. Now, when we jump back to when I was testing this out, I tried a couple different taping methods to get good thickness and buildup so I had crisp lines. Again, on this, after I had my initial masking, I had to go back and add 2 extra layers of masking tape around the perimeter so I could peel each layer in between each coat of gel coat. Again, it's still tedious work. Takes a lot of time, and one thing that I actually didn't really anticipate is once you spray the gel coat and you have to peel that tape in as much surface area as I have here, that is a messy, time-consuming job right there, which bounces back to where I'm glad I had that buffer with the PVA and unwaxed gel coat. It took quite a while to peel all that tape in between my coats and not drop it into the other gel coat, not get my hands into the existing gel coat, not make a mess. Your hands are covered in gel coat. In general, just it's dirty, messy work, and you're running against the clock. So it's just a little stressful, takes quite a bit of time. I didn't see it coming until I jumped into it, but if you guys are thinking of doing something like this on your at home on your own, be aware it's part of the gig. Pinholes. I knew from prepping the bilge that it wasn't perfect. I could see that there's some pinholes in there, and I figured, you know, gel coat's pretty thick, it's going to cover it up. I was shocked as soon as I started putting the brown on the first coat. I made it probably 6 inches, and I was just, oof. All those pinholes just jumped out at me. Definitely far from ideal. Not much I could do about it once I got to this point. I marched forward, got all the colors in. I have a plan of attack on how to address those pinholes. Not going to be part of today's video. That's going to be on the next video where we finish up all of this work. So I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail then, but it is one of those things that I expected some. I didn't expect as many that I had, and I have to come up with a plan on how to correct those to allow me to get to the finished product that I have envisioned in my head. Now, the last thing that I wanted to cover, guys, is guns. So initially, I was going to go ahead and use my good Binks gun that I have for automotive paint. I even did buy larger tips for it, and at the 11th hour, I decided, you know what, nah. I'm going to go ahead and do what everyone says doesn't work that well. $35 Amazon gun. This one has a 2.5 tip on it. Glad I did. I can tell you that really didn't have much issue spraying the brown or the white, but when we got into the orange and I had the fan pattern narrowed down considerably because it's such a smaller surface area, that had less flow going through the gun. Therefore, all of the gel coat sat in the gun, created a lot of heat, and it almost kicked off on me, or it actually did kick off on me twice inside this gun, but I was able to get it apart and get it out and cleaned in the nick of time. Very, very thankful I wasn't fighting that with my really nice gun. With as much work as I was doing, I probably should have just went and invested in a gel coat gun, but I don't see a lot more gel coat in my future, so I decided $35, why not? It's a throwaway gun. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Another thing that I didn't really talk about, this style cup, I was using some of it's like a Ziploc bag liner that goes in here and seals to the bottom. Huge savings on cleanup time. And again, from when I would get done spraying my final coat of gel coat, I would immediately stop. I needed to get the gun apart, get it cleaned, all the gel coat out of it. I then had to bounce back to the boat and get my masking tape up before everything dried up too much. We'll show you here in a second. I did have some issues with the gel coat starting to gel up in my masking tape. Not a big deal, but it did create more work. So I couldn't imagine trying to get that gel coat cleaned out all the way around this gun if I wouldn't have used a liner or a cup system like this. So if you're going to go this route and you're going to do something this intricate, think about your gun cleanup. Minimize that amount of time because pulling the tape is going to take longer than you expect. I think in general for each color, I did 3 coats in between getting it sprayed, gun cleaned in between each coat, getting the masking tape pulled in between each coat, and then finally getting it sprayed with PVA at the end. It was usually a 3 to 4 hour ordeal just to spray it. So it was quite a bit of work. I'm tired of cleaning paint guns, I can tell you that. So I'm bringing all this up. I'm sure those pros at home know all this. They have probably much better methods or workarounds or equipment to do it. But if you're like me and you wanted to try to achieve a really nice product result or try something super ambitious, the stuff you got at home, these are some of the big things that I didn't see coming into it that I had to adapt to that I figure hopefully it's going to help some of you guys out. Okay, so here's what we wound up with. Now, ignore the orange on the sides. I know I said earlier that I was going to hit that with the cream. I kind of wised up a little bit. The main body of the boat is cream. I have 2 quarts of the cream, and I was actually able to get all of that done in there with just one, so that leaves you 1 quart extra. I don't really have any touch-up I need to do on the boat with the orange, so I used the rest of the orange on the side, saved my cream that I have in the other quart for the remainder of the boat for repairs down the road. It'll be covered by the fuel tanks, so ignore it. Although, even for me now, it just throws off the whole look that I'm going for because it just looks goofy, but trust me, I'll show you here in a second. Not a big deal. Now, I ended up using 1 full quart of orange, 1 full quart of the beige, and 1 full quart of the brown. Ideally, looking back, I probably would have preferred to have 2 quarts of the brown and 1 quart of the beige, 1 quart of the orange. I think because of the different shapes of the brown and getting it to, lay down and get good coverage and thickness without blowing it all in the air, that's why I would have liked to have more. Ideally, I would have liked to have a little bit more thickness built up on that, but I think it's adequate for now. Looking pretty good. So you can see all of the time to get the shapes laid out. Really paid off, very symmetrical. I did my best to keep that orange line on the floor of the boat to go up and match the transom on both sides. Same thing over there. So I put a lot of thought into the layout and the standoffs and how everything was going to look when it's finished. So when we were discussing the masking tape, you can see right here where the orange Gelcoat, when I was peeling the tape up, lifted over and is sitting on the white. Now this happened in a lot of areas, and it's something that I obviously knew was happening when I was pulling the masking tape off, and I made the choice to just leave it. I didn't want to try to peel those sections off and potentially mess up more of that orange Gelcoat. It really comes down to the length of time from when I put the first coat of Gelcoat on to when I got the last coat of Gelcoat on and got the tape peeled. It started to cure up, then it fell over. Not that big of a deal. It happened pretty much everywhere all the way around, so I have a lot of work to go through and rectify those, which is something I have planned to do. So to tell you guys the truth, yep, I got the Gelcoat on, but in my opinion, it's only 60-70% of the way to where I want it to be. I have some things that I need to address. I need to address that overhang from the orange. I have to address the pinholes. If you remember that Gelcoat test panel that I did, I was fighting the crispness of the lines. Well, there's some sections, like right up here, you can see that I have a little bit of a gap in between the orange and the white, and also out here on the brown. So all of those things I'm looking to improve or get better. Not going to be on today's video. We're long in the tooth on what we've already done here today, so I'm going to cover all of that in the next video, and the goal is to get this bilge finalized and looking exactly like the outside of the boat. Right now, a lot of texture, not much shine, not much gloss. Close to what I want, not exactly what I want, so we're going to go one step further on the next video, guys. Alright guys, thanks for hanging in there. I know I was talking and rambling on a lot, but I felt that there was just really a lot to cover and a lot of things that I never really saw coming, even though I did a considerable amount of research, talking to people, and just looking into this ahead of time. There was a lot of surprises for me along the way. I really wanted to pass those on to you guys, so if you guys are going to try something like this, you can kind of watch out and maybe adapt and be a little bit further ahead of where I was, rather than me having to adapt on the fly on these. I'm by all means not a professional Gelcoat. I have a lot of paint experience, but one thing I wanted to really highlight or show is if you have enough discipline, enough attention to detail, I still think that even the Joe Schmo at home, you can come out with a pretty good product yourself. Clearly I have a lot of time invested in it to get to this point, and not everyone's willing to do that, but for me, my number one priority was getting the look and result that I wanted. Time, efficiency, material, that stuff wasn't a priority. The end result is my main goal here. So like I said, this is only part one. We're going to cover part two in the next video. As always, guys, I really appreciate your support for watching the channel, liking the videos, commenting, sharing it with your buddy. It means a lot to me. It really helps me out with these videos, gives me a lot of motivation. Appreciate the support. I thank you very much for watching, and we're going to see you guys on the next video.